Hey, we're streaming for like the fourth time.
Woo!
To nobody, yet again. That's all right. But we're here. It's our 1 year anniversary of the Just Browsing podcast. So give it up to nobody because it was just Zach and I that did everything.
I feel like you were about to really go off there for a second.
But,
give it up to nobody because it was just me and Zach.
Because you know what? Fuck all of you that don't support us.
Oh, man.
No, it's our 1 year anniversary, and we're just going to jump right into recording our episode since we never get anyone in the actual Twitch chat. So we're going live. You ready?
Ready.
Well, hello, ladies and gentlemen. It is the 1 year anniversary of the Just Browsing podcast here on planet Earth.
So elsewhere, it's been going on longer?
Well, time's different, remember, years are shorter on other planets, so it could be like the 5 year anniversary on what's closer to the sun, Mercury?
Yeah.
Could be like the 5 year anniversary on Mercury for all we know. I don't know how short their years are.
Interesting.
We're going to turn this into a space podcast now.
Yeah, so
fuck the 1 year.
Welcome.
Space.
Welcome back, everybody. I think how long has it been since our last podcast? Like a week and a half, 2 weeks, something like that?
Yeah, we did a
Seems like
Harry
it's been a
Potter
minute.
one.
Like the 20th, I think, something like that.
Yeah,
So
in July.
Yeah, welcome back to the Just Browsing podcast. This is Zach here with Matt, and it is August 1st, and I think we're going to try and get this posted today.
Yep.
But this is, to the day, the 1 year anniversary of the Just Browsing podcast, like Matt just mentioned. So we wanted to throw together just a little,
reflection.
1 year anniversary reflection podcast and kind of keep it a little unstructured and not have any sort of a topic to cover, but just reflect on the past year and, starting the podcast and where we kind of hope it goes in the future and then whatever else pops up.
Yeah, so, quick shout out because looking at our statistics before this episode, we have 87 downloads, and we don't really understand these statistics fully on the Podbean website.
Yeah.
They're kind of wishy-washy, so we're just basing them off of what they provide us. But it says we have 987 downloads through I believe it's 47 episodes. We have downloads in, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different countries. So shout out to all of our American friends that have jumped on the download train and listened to some of our episodes. We have a couple downloads to our northern friends in Canada, one in the Czech Republic, one in France, one in the United Kingdom, one in India, and one in New Zealand. So shout out to all of our international listeners.
I really genuinely hope that those are actual people and not like some sort of a bot that has downloaded our podcast, because how cool is it to think that someone in the Czech Republic has listened to a Just Browsing podcast episode?
Well, like I said, I think there are people around the world that have listened to it. I just think it's hard to pinpoint that because if they don't download it, I don't know if that stat goes into like we've looked at the iTunes or the Apple podcast stats, and it doesn't show, this was in this city or this country. Yeah. So it's one of those, like, it could be for all we know, and in one of those,
that's one of those things.
There's more listeners.
That begs the question. So let's go on the assumption that it's real people that have listened in Canada, New Zealand, Czech Republic, wherever, France. How did they stumble across the Just Browsing podcast of all podcasts, do you think? Were they just on Podbean or something and were like looking for random podcasts and just clicked on an episode or something?
They could have done that. It could have been like maybe someone we are friends with on Facebook or someone else that shared one of our Facebook
Yeah, maybe they
posts,
got some friend in France
saw
or whatever.
It and they just clicked on it and then downloaded an episode or something. I would say they could have just stumbled upon it. I mean, it's...
Because I will say I have been on... I listen to all of my podcasts on Spotify now, but I used to listen almost exclusively on Apple Podcasts. And from time to time, I still do it now, but not so much anymore. But on Apple Podcasts, I mean, it's basically this way on any podcast app. You can go out there and just explore new podcasts.
Right.
In any category, about whatever you want. And there's always the most famous ones, the most popular, the trending, all this kind of stuff. They'll obviously the most streamed and all this kind of stuff. But then you can just open it up to show me literally any podcast in, say, comedy.
Right.
And it'll be anything from like the very tippity top of like Joe Rogan with millions of people listening to like
someone with 2 followers.
Right, someone with 2 followers who is just like us, who's a couple of comedians, or maybe it's even just one guy doing like a Bill Burr type thing where he's just trying to work on material or get his voice out there or whatever. So you can stumble across podcasts like that because there are literally millions of podcasts available, I think, on like the various platforms.
Oh yeah.
So
well, especially with the pandemic.
Surely someone maybe from, Czech Republic or France or wherever was just doing that and being like, let's just see what we got going here with the podcast. And they're like, just browsing. And they like went in there and just clicked on like maybe they're interested in the NBA.
Maybe they were just doing some browsing.
Maybe they were just doing some browsing and they found the Just Browsing podcast and they were like, hey, this is a sign from the universe that I need to listen to this podcast exactly one time.
Well, but that's the thing. They could listen to it a lot more. They just downloaded
right.
one.
It was just downloaded once. Because that's a good point, and that's something that we've talked about multiple times is like, when I listen to podcasts, I'm not downloading the episodes.
Right,
unless I have to like go
to
get on a plane and I'm not going to have Wi-Fi. I'm just streaming it. So like all of those streaming statistics are not being captured in our Podbean statistics, which means that I think we've both agreed upon the assumption of like, the true number of the amount of like listens or streams, if you will, is way higher than 987.
Oh, yeah.
Which is what Podbean is showing as the official download count.
I think Apple, when we were looking at it, and again, we don't know the accuracy necessarily of these statistics, just because it's hard to get a read when, to us, we didn't know at first if a download truly was a download. We thought it might just be a listen,
right? Yeah,
or like someone
or
clicked
a stream
on it
or whatever. Yeah,
and. So when you look at it, we have 987 downloads on Podbean, but then when we were looking at our Apple statistics, it was showing that we had like 768 listens
right.
Through all of our episodes. And I'm like, well, that doesn't add up because, according to Podbean, Apple is only 33% of all of our downloads.
Exactly.
And I'm like, well, if that's 700, math doesn't make sense right there.
The 700 to the 987, that
it's
does
not
make
33%.
Sense. Yeah.
So it's one of those, we have, Apple takes up 33%, but then we have Podbean at 17 and Spotify close to 17. And then we have the Facebook app, which I don't understand because the Facebook app should link you back to Podbean.
Right.
Because all I do is copy our link from Podbean into our Facebook post.
Right.
So it should click you into Podbean.
Yeah.
And
then
not on
the stream should
Facebook.
happen from Podbean, not from Facebook.
Right. So
app.
it doesn't, some of these don't make sense. We also
And then
have
there's a
stuff
bunch of,
like Google Chrome.
What are these
up.
random, like Bullhorn and...
FFmpeg,
No idea what that is.
Safari,
Overcast? I've never really
Overcast,
heard of Overcast either.
LAVF, and then Amazon Music Podcasts, iOS Player, iTunes, Google Podcasts, radio.de, and then others.
Yeah, then it just says other. I noticed that the other day, and there's like 82 downloads of just other. I'm like, well, what does that mean?
Right, so I'm trying to figure out what other platforms we're
Yeah.
exposed on, because that to me would show that there's other, Podbean type sources out there that we're being loaded to that maybe I didn't. Exactly what we signed up for.
Yeah.
And I've told you everything else that I've signed up for, and they're all major like Spotify,
right?
Google,
if it's,
all that. I don't know what
if
other
it's
it would be.
not covered in, Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and then maybe like Amazon or Google Podcasts. What else is there? What is this other?
And I didn't think there were podcasts on iTunes. So how do we have 2 downloads through iTunes?
I guess maybe it's just, so there's Apple Podcast app on the iPhones, but if you wanted to listen to a podcast on your computer through iTunes, you could just stream it.
It
through
still
iTunes.
goes to a podcast site, I'm pretty sure. Like if you go to iTunes and you look for podcasts, it takes you to a podcast site.
I don't think so. I think you can actually stream podcasts from iTunes, which is what that's referring to, I think.
Let's check. This is why we have computers readily available.
Because I have iTunes on my MacBook, and like when I've listened to podcasts while I've been on my MacBook doing other stuff.
But iTunes is an app because it's a media player. So
yeah, that's what I'm saying. So you can listen to it from iTunes. That's why they're counting it as iTunes. Does that make sense?
I have iTunes on this computer. Too many damn monitors to look at.
Anyway, the point being, it's a little bit hard to totally understand this. The statistics, basically.
Right. So
Which is a little
for
bit
all of you that
frustrating.
have downloaded an episode, we greatly appreciate it. And for all of you that listen to all of our episodes, we, appreciate that just as much.
Yeah, definitely.
Because it's not like we get anything from you downloading them. We just want you to enjoy listening, and we want more feedback from you, of course, but we just enjoy that you're looking at our stuff, or not necessarily looking at it, but listening to
consuming it, yeah.
Consuming it into your amazingly smart brains.
But what do you think of, as you think back on the last year, what do you think about this whole little this little adventure we've embarked on?
We've discussed this for probably, and I think we said this in our intro, we had discussed this for probably 2 or 3 years prior to actually starting.
We had definitely mulled the idea around quite a bit. I remember that.
But we never had, maybe not necessarily the capital, but we never had the drive to necessarily
commit to it.
To commit. I bought that Amazon kit for $40, and then
we never did anything with it.
We took it out of the box and we looked at it, and I'm like, I have no clue how to set this up and even work it. Didn't know anything about the software. And then, I got my own place. We had space to bring stuff in and do it, and then me and you discussed it, and when we were discussing it that one day, I was like, let's just do it.
Yeah.
We have the capital to do it.
Yeah.
Let's just put our heads down and do it. And, I think we've been very committed. I think, like I said, this will be episode...
It basically comes out to roughly, if this is our year anniversary, we're just shy of doing 1 episode per week, basically.
Yeah, so
one episode per week would be 52, and we have 47 or 48 episodes.
So this is episode 48. So we will have missed 4 weeks technically in the last year of doing an episode, which in reality, I mean, we've probably missed 6 to 8 total weeks, but that's, things come up. Stuff happens, times don't work out.
We've been pretty good, pretty consistent. And I think one of the things that got us to that number, the fact that we've done nearly 50 episodes, is that whole weekly fantasy football and NFL recap thing that we were doing last year, which I think one of my learning experiences and takeaways of doing this for the past year that I don't want to do moving forward is do that again. I think
if we do that, it'll be we'll do a beginning year one where we can talk about our teams and the opposing teams, and then we'll do an end of the year after the playoffs.
Right, yeah. I think we could do periodic episodes throughout the season to talk about what's going on in the NFL season and stuff like that, but
no fantasy.
There's no need for the weekly updates. I just even for me it became tedious, and I'm a part of the fantasy league. You know what I mean? I think for listeners that was probably a little bit tedious.
I think to keep up with our sports, we should probably do quarterly football ones. So after every quarter of the NFL season, so every 4 weeks we'll do one.
Yeah, just update on where the standings are,
right,
who's been killing it, who's injured, all that kind of stuff. So.
Yeah, because I think the weekly, for a second there we were doing Tuesdays and Thursdays for a couple because we wanted to do.
Because we were doing a football
fantasy,
one,
and then we would do a different one
and another one. Yeah.
So I mean, technically we've missed more episodes or more weeks than not then if we did the doubles, but we're still producing, almost an episode a week, which is great. And I'll be honest, I still don't think we've caught our break yet. I think we still haven't marketed ourselves, to the max yet. I know we share on Facebook, and we usually get 160 to 180 people to push it in front of. Yeah. So we're not getting those downloads, but we don't know if we're getting those listens either.
Yeah, that's the part is you log in, you look at the download numbers on Podbean, you're like, I don't know if that really helped us by sharing it and all that. We feel like it's helping, but you don't, you said, you don't see that reflected in the numbers, so it's kind of hard to tell how many people are actually listening.
Well, and it's one of those, I understand, Facebook can be a little bit different because we're a page, and people can see, oh, you like that page, well, people can see your information then. It's more of a public-facing, but it's free marketing for us. So if there's any marketing geniuses out there that know of free marketing tools to get us pushed out even more than just social media, because we do have an Instagram, we do have a Twitter, we do have a Facebook, we're on Twitch streaming live, we're trying to broaden our reach. So if there's any marketing people out there that have any ideas with how to push this in front of more people, reach out to us, shoot us an email, shoot us a direct message on Facebook. I don't know if they can direct message actually because it's a page. They might be able to.
You probably can.
Go to Instagram, leave a comment, or direct message Instagram or the Twitter. Feel free to reach out to us. I like to think that we're both very kind and, understanding human beings. So don't shy away from
we're really
communicating with us.
Total beginners when it comes to this podcast thing. Even though we've been doing this for a year now, and we have almost 50 episodes that have been recorded and published, we're still figuring this out as we go. And I think the thing that I'm still happy with is, the podcast hasn't blown up and we're not like doing Joe Rogan numbers.
But we haven't lost passion to do it either.
Yeah, I'm still having fun, which is what we covered
right.
in the intro podcast when we first sat down a year ago today to do this. It was like, if anything else comes out of this, we just get to hang out once a week and talk about fucking quantum mechanics or space or
right.
movies or whatever. And I like doing that. It's
right.
fun.
And I sit here and I do look at statistics. I want it to blow up and be like a big thing. Which anybody that if you're going to take time out of your day, you're going to want it to be successful.
You want to like reap some rewards at some point.
Honestly, if we can get 13 more downloads to get this to 1,000 downloads with any, I guess technically it won't be a year at this point, but I'll continue to say within a year. I'm going to be super stoked.
Yeah.
I was stoked when we got an episode past 20.
Yeah.
I see we have 2 episodes past 50, and I'm like,
yeah,
hell yeah, people have clicked on this. Like, yeah, I want it to blow up, but at the same time, if we don't have passion, we don't enjoy doing it, it's never going to be successful anyways.
Yeah.
But we have that, passion
I don't,
and that
yeah.
desire to keep doing it.
Right.
I don't have any desires to stop, and if you wanted to stop, I would just solo it on.
Yeah. Well, and I don't think either of us are really approaching it as like a business venture. I mean, sure, if it blew up, we ended up making money off of it, that'd be fucking amazing, obviously. But
that's not why we
That's
did
not
it.
why we're doing it.
No.
We're doing it so we can sit here and argue about the ranking of Harry Potter movies and like which Marvel movie we think is the best, and
we just wanted to have
are
fun.
aliens out there right now or are they not? And like those are just fun conversations to have,
So if you want to know if aliens are out there or not, tune into the Aliens podcast.
Yeah. That has been one thing that I've had a good time doing this whole time when we're recording podcasts is we'll get on some tangent, like we'll be like,
and then you interject into the
we'll sit down and go, okay, we're gonna talk about our Marvel movie bracket, and then next thing you know, for some reason we're talking about aliens or time travel or something, and I'm like, oh, also by the way, go back and listen to our Ultimate Movie Franchise series of podcasts, or go check out our Ocean podcast or our Alien podcast or whatever. It's like we've pretty much covered a lot of great topics already. So it's like, hey, if you're interested in, or, if you're like me and you're interested in, pondering the cosmos and our place in it and aliens, we have a whole episode all about that. That's all we talk about. Like, just go check that out,
I would say, kind of jump back into like how I feel about our podcast. I would say for this next year, something that I think we should try and do, and I don't know how we're going to go about it. It's just more of a try and do it a couple times, would be to collaborate with, either another podcast or get different guests in here that isn't like a Taya or some like Brandon or Zach, but get someone in here that we wouldn't expect to have here.
Yeah.
And, just try and reach out more and get some more voices on the show. I think that would be fun. It would definitely change, how we would do it, because it wouldn't make us uncomfortable. It would kind of be like, well, we're not used to this, so let's like we're interviewing someone more, say, than, just me and you discussing.
Right.
So I think it would be fun to, like I said, 2 or 3 times. I think it should be our goal to try and bring, just somebody completely different onto the show, or, collaborate with another podcast somewhere else, or figure it out. And I think that would be really fun to like join things and just, have a good time like that.
For sure.
So I think that would be my goal for our, this upcoming year, at least and I would like to beat this year's downloads. So next year at this time, I would like to have 2,500 total downloads or something like that.
Yeah.
So where we increase by 500 over the year, or I guess 513.
Yeah.
To be
Now you're thinking
specific.
like the businessman. I want to see the year-over-year comparisons. What are your quarterly earnings results?
Quarterly earnings for the Just Browsing podcast, I can report, are currently sitting at quadruple zeros.
$0
$0 earned, but lots of memories made.
Yeah.
Which are more important.
The real earnings per share were the memories we made along the way.
Yeah. Fuck money, but if you want to support our cause, please go to our GoFundMe page.
Just
browsing. No, I'm just kidding. We don't have a GoFundMe. We're not like that.
No Patreon, no GoFundMe.
No. But seriously, there is a GoFundMe out there for the Just Browsing podcast. It's to buy us a studio so that we can, have a studio. we need $5 million.
And get away from Matt's dog mainly, so we're not
Yes.
molested while we record.
Just to allow us to get in, do our episode, get out.
Yeah.
No, just kidding. We don't want your money. We just want your listens.
Yeah.
And your feedback. I want more feedback this
Yeah.
upcoming year. I want more people to chime in on like the movie brackets if we do more brackets or even on more topics, chime into the live stream, chat with us live.
yeah.
You can hide behind a makeshift username.
I think that's been one thing that on a lot of other podcasts that I listen to, that's one thing that we've kind of struggled with. And again, that's why I'm saying we're beginning level podcasters. But a lot of the other podcasts that I listen to, they have a much more streamlined approach of how they interact with listeners and fans. You know what I mean? And I think it makes it, I agree, it makes it a lot more fun to have interaction and get like immediate reactions and input and comments and questions from listeners. So then you're able to ballpark where you're at somehow. You know what I mean?
Right.
Where it's like, what are we doing that's not working? What are we doing that you like? And we'll try and do less of the stuff that's not working and more of the stuff that you like. You know what I mean? Like
right, so we could have had feedback in the middle of our fantasy, and they're like, "Stop doing fantasy
like
recaps.
we don't give a fuck
care.
about your fantasy league. Talk about space more."
Right.
I'm like, okay, great.
We would have stopped doing that.
I think that's like I said has been one thing that we went a little overboard with the weekly recaps, but I think we were trying to push out more content, and it gave us an excuse to get together all the time and talk about fantasy, which is like during fantasy football season for anyone who plays that's what you do all season long. You just talk about fantasy football. So it's it kind of killed two birds with one stone, but I think that's probably something that we could steer away from a little bit, which I think we're both in agreement about, and just talk about other stuff. I think there's plenty of other topics that we want to get to eventually.
I like our more open discussions too. I like to come into these kind of like today. We came in and we're like, we're just going to talk about this year's podcast and
just
where we want to see it going. And I like just having more open where we're kind of coming in and it's just like, let's just, like our shooting the shit episodes.
Yeah.
I really enjoy that because we could bounce from one topic to the next, and it's just, it's just a discussion. It's not like a forced, like, the brackets ones, don't get me wrong, are amazing and they're fun, but that's because it's kind of an open discussion in a forced sense. It's like you have to make a decision, but then you can explain your decision, and it can be completely different than the person sitting across from you.
That's why I like, and don't get me wrong, I agree with you about the shooting the shit episodes and episodes like today where we're just kind of talking. I like those a lot, but I also, there's part of me who likes to have at least some structure. I'm not going to like come in here with an itinerary and be like, Matt, we can't deviate from these talking points. It's like, it's not
we would never succeed.
It's not a news program.
Right.
But I like to have some sort of, like I said, on prior episodes, like if we come in with okay, here's our topic, that's your like scaffolding for the conversation.
Right.
So you can go, okay, everything that we're going to talk about, let's keep it structured around the ocean or around aliens or
I think
Harry Potter or whatever.
I think it's good to have that, but I think it's good, like I'm saying, have a topic, but have open discussion about it. I know we brought up like the ocean, and we started talking about like movies involving the ocean or like space.
Yeah.
We used a lot of movies to reference it. But then again, we don't know a lot about it. So movies are our way to kind of
That's your reference point.
Right.
Yeah.
So I just think, sometimes we can be heavy on movies and TV shows when we rely on information for looking into stuff.
Yeah.
And I think having more open discussion and just like, even if we sound as stupid as we do sometimes, just like saying it and just being like, okay, well, now I sound like a dumbass, but it was fun. It was fun to just make,
that's why
make
I
shit
think,
up and like bring it up. Like aliens would be such a good topic to come back to because there's just so much you could talk about, and there's like there's nothing out there that you can research. You could research it, but at the same time, you're like, I don't know if I can believe this.
No,
and you can't go off of a movie because you're like, it's not.
They're just thought experiments, which I love that kind of stuff, and I think it's one of those things that I try and do a lot, and Taya tries to do this a lot as well, where we're just hanging around a group of people, and there's like a lull in the conversation, or you can kind of tell the conversation stopped a little bit. Just ask one of those questions, and it immediately gets people's brains firing. You know, you can be like, just something as simple as like, do you believe in ghosts or not? And then just go around the fucking room and be like, and ask people why. And then someone explains their position, and everyone else goes, "That's fucking insane, man.
We could do a paranormal.
Why do you believe that or whatever?" And then there you go. Now we're off and running on this whole paranormal discussion.
We could do a paranormal episode.
I think we should. I think every human being has an opinion on most of these topics. You know what I mean?
Right.
Whether or not you think about it actively on a daily basis or not, everyone's got a stance when it comes to aliens or ghosts or, conspiracy theories or whatever.
Right.
Whatever. everyone's got an opinion. You just need to ask them about it. And a podcast is the perfect platform to sit down and just like dive into this stuff and kind of dissect how people think about it and like their reasoning behind it all.
Right.
I love that kind of
Well,
stuff.
see, and that's where I want to jump back into, like, talking about getting more, listener engagement is I want more people's thoughts on it. Whether you say, Matt, you're a dumbass, Zach, you're a dumbass, or, I agree with Matt, or I agree with Zach. I want more engagement on that, or being like, hey, you guys talked about this, like, touch on it again. Do a solo
or
episode
here's
on
something
that,
related to that. Can you talk about
right.
this?
I want more engagement, with random people. I don't care if I don't want to know you.
Yeah.
I want you to just enjoy listening to us and then just give us feedback to where we can build off of your feedback without knowing who you are, because that makes the feedback that much more authentic to us. Taya gives you feedback. It's like, okay, well, she gives me feedback on quit saying phenomenal. Well, I'm going to say phenomenal now because I know it makes her mad.
Yeah.
Let me have someone else give me feedback that we have no idea who
Yeah.
it is, so we can just enjoy and like.
It was kind of fun the other day, and I gave a shout out to my Uncle Chris, who clearly had just finished watching Game of Thrones and listened to our Game of Thrones podcast, and then was listening to whatever episode it was where we were
the shit part.
Yeah, where we were talking about possibly doing a war movie bracket at some point in the future, and he had lots of thoughts on not only Game of Thrones but on the war war movie brackets, and yeah, great ideas. And I was like reading all that, and it was like you said, it's kind of exciting to go, oh, okay, here's what someone outside of our little sphere thinks about how we can go about this. Like, there's some input from an outside
and we're
source.
going to use that input because it was valuable. We're not saying we're going to use everybody's input, because some people might be out there and just troll us saying some wacky thing out of left field. But if you give us, a very viable piece of information to build an episode around, or, interject into an episode, we're going to do it.
Yeah.
And I just want to have people providing that feedback, and so it's one of those, like, how do we just get engaged with more people?
Yeah.
That's really what I like. I want to grow, but I want it to be like authentic. I'm not trying to spend $500 a month on an advertising campaign.
Yeah,
I want it to be
necessary.
authentic. I want it to just like people to come in naturally. But I do want to market it. It's one of those things like market it, but we're not spending money to market it.
Right.
How do we freely
have it
market
just grow
this?
organically,
Right.
which I think happens for most stuff like this if you just keep at it long enough. I mean, it's like if you wanted to start a food truck or something, it's like
But you just got to get that one
initially
break.
no one's going to know about it, and then you get that word of mouth. If you do good business, if you make good food, people go off, tell their friends about it, their family, more people come, and then next thing you know, it's growing.
Right.
Like that's
so that comes back to feedback, though. Tell us what we're doing right and what we're doing wrong, so that we can correct what we're doing wrong, to where we're making our episodes more and more enjoyable to listen to.
The only piece of information or advice that someone could give that I'm going to have a really hard time listening to is don't talk about movies as much. Because unfortunately, that's just what I really, really like to talk about most of the time. And I spend most of my free time reading about movies. So, and like you said, even if we're talking about the ocean or space,
we reference a movie.
we reference movies. I mean, I'm sorry, I don't know what to tell you. I watch lots of movies,
I mean,
and some of them
that's
are about the ocean, and some of them are about space. I'm
That's
gonna
my
bring
only
it up.
backlash, though, is like I can understand that and be like, they're like, okay, they're only talking about movies.
Yeah.
And so I and to myself think that, but I'm like, well, how else can we talk about something without relating to a movie? Movies are made about everything. Let's
Well,
be real.
yeah,
You're
and
going to relate to a movie no matter
I'm sorry,
what.
it's like one of the top forms of entertainment for the world's population. Like,
Well,
movies are really fucking popular.
We're also
Like, lots of
27 years
people
old.
watch
It's not
movies.
like, we're veterans. We've never served. It's not like
Yeah, right.
our life experiences are something that we're going to sit here and reflect heavily on, like, oh, I went through this, I went through that. Let's be real. Our lives have been, fairly positive for the most part.
Yeah.
With I can't complain about, I'm alive, got a roof over my head, food in my belly. Can't complain, right? So it's not like we have all these life experiences we can sit there and be like, yeah, back when I was 14, I was, addicted to heroin or something, and try and reflect on a moment that we're not going to be like, well, in this one movie, I saw a guy addicted to heroin, because then it's like, okay, that's a movie, dude. Like, in real life, I was inches from death. We don't have one of those experiences where it's like, a whole episode of just reflection. It's like, I got to relate this to something that I enjoy. So, yeah, I mean, I get it. I understand. Like, I don't want to talk about movies all the time, but at the same time, it's like, well,
It's fun.
I don't know anything about space. It's not like I sit here and just all my monitors have space themed backgrounds, but I
Yeah.
don't know anything about space.
Yeah. Well, and like you said, movies give you if you don't know anything about space but you're interested in it, movies give you a way to kind of explore that a little bit without actually being able to go do the
Without
thing.
being like a Jeff Bezos.
Right,
who's
because
got
sorry,
billions
we're
to
not
send you
a
into
billionaire
space.
who can create our own space company and build a rocket and get on it and go to space.
Speaking of that,
Not
like what a
everyone's-
weird flex. He's like, yeah, I just went to space.
Real
on a,
weird
on
flex.
a rocket that was like tested 5 times and
Yeah.
looked extremely not normal.
I have lots of thoughts about that whole thing because, like you said, I think the perfect encapsulation of that entire thing is weird flex. Jeff Bezos, weird flex.
Like, if you wanted to go to space, why didn't you just partner with Elon Musk and
Yeah.
ride in one of the new Dragon rockets that have proven to go
Yeah.
safely into space and come safely back down? You had like 5 test flights of this rocket, and you're like, we're going in. The
Yeah.
world's richest man could have literally disappeared.
Yeah.
All because he wanted to. And they were like, you know,
Dude, you know what I was
I don't even
thinking
know if
about
he really
the other
went
day?
into space. Like,
No,
he
I think
got
they
to
did
the tip
that-
of the atmosphere,
yeah,
and then they were
right.
like, oh, we got to come back down.
They probably got to wherever it's like weightlessness and we're up there
Right.
for, I don't know, a couple minutes and then came back or whatever. I didn't read too much into it. I just saw all the reactions and stuff. But you know what I was actually thinking about the other day with that whole thing? Like you said, the world's richest man could have disappeared or been killed. What sort of like contingencies do you think he got into place before he got on that thing? Because you're talking about the guy who has an unfathomable amount of money and resources and like assets. He's just
Do they have-
recently
does he
gone
have
through
kids?
that divorce. I don't know if he has
I
kids or
don't
not.
think they do.
So imagine the like lawyers and the paperwork involved of like what happens to all of that if something happens to him. You know what I mean?
I would hate to be like Elon Musk lawyer, or I would hate to
It
be
would
one of
be
those lawyers.
a headache, man.
But then again, you probably make so much money that you're
Oh,
like,
yeah.
they're my only client.
Well, and there's got to be like a team of lawyers because
Oh, yeah.
they're just they have their hands in so many pots. It's like you have to have lawyers that are experts in all of these different areas.
Well, I mean, like, think about it. Like, you get big. Like, think about like Joe Rogan. You know, he's a good comedian. He's probably the biggest podcaster out there.
has to be.
You
yeah.
know, he's going to have lawyers that probably read through his joke material to make sure that there's nothing that someone out there could be like, oh, because in this day and age, you can sue, which I'm going to go political real quick, but you can sue for anything. Someone sneezes on you and you're like, I'm suing you for bodily harm. And some lawyer out there is going to take it up, and some judge is going to take it up, and it's just going to be a bunch of bullshit, which I absolutely hate. You know, go back to when our parents were in high school or elementary school or middle school. You had a problem with someone, you walked across the street, you fought it out, you walked back into school, and the teachers were like, all right, you're done. Like, you're done. That's it. Nowadays, you look at someone wrong, and they're like, I'm suing you. No. So imagine being like a comedian where you say something, you know, about like the LGBTQ or however many letters are in there. I can't remember all of them. But like that community, or, you know, you fine line the racy, you know, someone could sue you because you have hurt their feelings. And it's like, how do you fine line that as not only a comedian, but someone that runs a podcast, but then you're also part of the UFC? Like, he's got to have lawyers that probably read through his material.
I don't think comedy wise, no, probably not. And how do you do that on a podcast?
Well,
too? 'Cause
definitely
it's
not
all
on a
just happening
podcast,
live.
but part of me thinks you have someone
well, I will say
on
so.
like retainer that's like
me
"Ah,
and
yeah."
Sam went and saw Rogan with Chappelle and
did you?
Tom Segura in Vegas.
Did you guys do anything else while you were there?
Yeah, a couple things.
Oh, okay.
Couple, 2-3 things. They took everyone's cell phones as you went through security and put them in these little RFID blocker things that you could not unlock and get your phone out of until you left the show. They had to use like little special things to unlock your little like package that your phone was kept in or whatever for that specific reason. Like you can tell
Well, that reason, yeah. And then they don't want.
and think about how crazy that is that in this day and age, if you're a comedian, that has to be something that you have to be worried about. Whereas like back in the day,
You could say whatever you
if you went to a comedy show in the 80s, no one outside of that room is going to know what you
Bro,
said. Like
if you
what
went to a
joke that
comedy
offended
show in the
anyone.
2010s
Nowadays, you can video it, tweet it out, put it on Instagram or whatever, and all of a sudden millions of people who aren't even there take it out of context and get really upset about it.
Even stuff we said, and like if me and you went back to high school right now, we would be expelled within a week, just for the things we would have said in high school or done, and that's not even kidding. the way high schools are right now, anything that we said or did, we would be expelled. We'd be suspended and expelled. But back when we did it, it was fine. No one blinked an eye. No one batted an eye. Everything we did was normal, which makes me feel even older that high school was 10 years ago.
Yeah, think about that for a second.
But that's how much shit has changed in this world of people becoming so soft that now words are apparently the worst thing in the world. We're building nuclear arsenals all around the world, and people are like, they said this one word. And I'm like, okay, well, this country now has 500 nuclear missiles. One of those could wipe out half the world's population, and you're worried about a word.
Are you going to get down off your soapbox, or are you going to stay up there for a little few more minutes?
Dude, I could talk about this for fucking ever.
Oh, man. Let's steer away from that.
We've done so good for a whole year of avoiding political discussion.
I know.
Like, I was thinking, I'm like, maybe we should do an episode on COVID, one day. And then I'm like,
no. I wouldn't touch that with a fucking 10-foot pole. Not a chance.
Dude, I'll walk right into COVID.
Great, do it.
Head
Just
first.
don't do it with me on the podcast.
And I'm just going to headbutt it away. Got so much to say.
Yeah, let's keep that to ourselves.
Well, you know what we don't have to keep to ourselves? The fact that we're 13 downloads away from 1 billion downloads.
Yeah, I'm actually pretty excited that we're almost to 1,000. But like you said, I feel like 1,000 might be like, 40% of the true amount of streams and listens that people have had for this podcast.
And
which is kind of, I want to know that number.
With that, part of me is thinking of looking into like another site that compiles all the statistics from everything, and just like if it's $5 a month, just seeing what it looks like, because then we can truly get more understanding of our outreach, our audience, and what we need to do.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I try. I like to use. We don't have any engagement, so statistics is our best way to try and, maneuver, make updates, changes that we need to, and it's really hard to when you're like, well,
you're only getting like a sliver of the picture, it seems like.
Like, do we just need to do like we have our introduction to Just Browsing's our highest downloaded episode with 53, and then our Pick 2 Any 2 is our second with 50. Do we just need to do introduction to Just Browsing Part 2 and Pick 3 Any 3, and then we'll just go from 2 up to 100, like pick 100 any 100?
I think we could do more games like that, though. Those little game ideas.
I think
that's what that Pick 2 Any 2 was, and it was just like an hour and 40 minutes of us being like arguing over if Jason Bourne would beat Brian Mills or something. You know what I mean?
I think we could do that. We'll have to, instead of finding one though, we should build one.
Yeah,
I think that would be even better.
Well, it wouldn't be that hard. You could just take the same concept from another one and just plug in different ones.
I also think, and leave a comment in the comment section below. What if we started a Reddit page? We could use that as like a discussion forum, because we don't really have a platform for like an open discussion.
Right.
Like, I don't really understand Reddit as far as setting everything up and seeing like how you set up like a server or a page or whatever. Like, what if we set up like a Reddit page where we could have our open discussion out there, where after our episode, say today, we decide what we're doing next week, and then we can just be like, hey, we post on Reddit and be like, for this upcoming week's episode, this is what we're going to talk about. Give us your thoughts below, and then we have stuff to go off of. Yeah. I don't know how many people will go into it. I don't know. Again, it's one of those, how do we get people to join in on the Reddit discussion? Right. We could post all this, and then we look at our Reddit page next year at this time, and there's one person that chimed in.
Yeah.
And it's just like a fake account that just said some really random shit.
Which is like what's going on in the YouTube comments. I don't know. I told you, I've been on Reddit as just like someone without an account, like a lurker, they call it, for years now. And I finally recently created an account, and I'm able to go in and like make comments and like things and subscribe to different subreddits and all that kind of stuff. And even I still don't understand how it works exactly. And there's the one thing I was telling you, I was like, one thing I've seen is it's very like self-promoting on most of the subreddits. And that's the thing that's kind of interesting, is like, I think that's what people like about Reddit, is it's all very democratized. So you have like every subreddit has its own rules. You know what I mean? So Reddit, the platform, is just allowing all these different subreddits to exist. And if you're interested in Westworld, the TV show, you go to the Westworld subreddit, and Westworld subreddit has different rules than like the movies subreddit. You know what I
Right.
mean? So some of them allow you to do self-promotion, but most of them don't. Like if you can go and like
They just want it to be a discussion.
yeah,
page.
it'll be like before you do anything, read our rules, and you can look at like their top 10 rules or whatever, and always in there is like no self-promotion. So you can't be like,
which is fine. I mean, it's
Yeah.
the same with like Twitch
I get
streamers
it,
and stuff.
I think the rationale is like they want to avoid that subreddit just getting inundated with everyone being like, go read my comic book or go listen to this
Right.
album I made or go watch my short film
While
or go
the
listen
one
to
guy
my
trying to
podcast.
discuss the topic is just getting
Right.
bumped
Yeah,
down
he's
and
just
down
getting
and
bumped down.
down.
So I think they're just trying to just get rid of all of that stuff. And then some of them, I've looked into it a little bit, and some of them will be like, okay, this subreddit every Saturday is self-promotion Saturday or whatever.
Right.
And they're like,
So just spam your shit.
now
and-
just blow us up with any stuff you're working on. If you got a website you're building, whatever, like put it on here, discuss it with people, get likes, dislikes, all that kind of stuff, comments. But a lot of it is like completely discouraging that it's all for mainly just discussion of
which is
stuff.
fine. I mean, I understand. Like, I watch a lot of the Twitch stuff, and they don't want self-promotion. They
Yeah.
built their channel, and they don't want you to use their platform to
To
promote
get
yourself.
in front of other people.
Right.
Yeah.
And which is fine. We haven't earned the right to be like, hey, Joe Rogan, shout us out.
Right.
Right? Joe Rogan stumbles upon us, enjoys listening to us. One episode, he might just be like, hey, by the way, I found, Just Browsing out there. Go give them
Yeah.
them a follow or a listen or whatever.
I do think that is one of the cool things he does is on his podcast. If he's got a guest on there who, say it's a movie director and he's coming on there, this is part of his press circuit. He's got a new movie coming out.
Right.
Part of him being on the podcast is to promote the movie.
Right.
Or,
Oh, yeah.
whoever's written a book or whatever, some new album that's come out.
Oh, yeah.
Comedy special, whatever it may be.
But
and
Joe-
then Joe is nice enough to be like, hey, I'm going to use my platform of being in front of however many millions of listeners or viewers or
To push
whatever
your stuff.
to be like, hey guys, go check out this book. I've read it. It's fucking awesome. Go buy it on
and then,
Amazon.
but
or
that
whatever,
direct, but the thing with Joe is completely different in a way too. Is he doesn't have just like random
yeah,
people.
They're
Those
like people he know
are big enough
or
that they
knows.
could also turn around and be like when he did the episode with Post. He could have been
Yeah.
like, guys, go listen to my Joe Rogan
Right.
podcast.
Exactly.
And all of Post's people that don't follow Joe go and
Go
listen to
check
the
it out,
episode,
yeah.
and then they're like, "Oh, this is cool! Like, I'm going to
Yeah.
follow Joe Rogan's podcast now." So it works in his favor too.
Yeah.
It's not like he's going out of his way to
Right.
help other people. He's just
But that's the cool part about it is like when he does that, like you said, it goes both ways. So
Right.
everyone's helping each other out.
Right.
And like one of the guys on there, Lex Friedman, this scientist that he always has on there, who's like an expert in like artificial intelligence, and I'm not really sure what it is. Big brain guy.
that's what we need to do too. Is talk about like AI.
Trust me, I fucking love talking about that stuff. He has a podcast, and from the time I listened to Lex on the Joe Rogan Experience for the first time, like a couple years back, to when he's on it now, because he's like started to be more of a recurring guest.
Right.
Lex's podcast has blown up to like one of the most popular podcasts on any of the platforms because he's always on Joe Rogan's podcast and he's so interesting. And Joe's like, go listen to the Lex Friedman podcast.
Right, because it's different.
Yeah.
They're
So, like-
they're two different.
Yeah. So
things.
if you come to the Joe Rogan Experience as, the great part about that one is like they cover so many topics. If you go there going, hey, that was an interesting discussion about artificial intelligence. I want to know more about that. You go, well, that guest has his own podcast where that's all he talks about. Now I'll go over
Right.
here and check that podcast out. You know what I mean?
I look at podcasts like they're individual, like it's an individual song.
Mm-hmm.
Just because you like one podcast doesn't mean you can't like 500 other.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just like music, if you only liked one song, you're gonna just listen to one song. Podcasts are just hour to 2 hour long songs.
Yeah.
But you can like as many as you want. It's whatever is interesting to you.
Yeah.
So it's really
And
just-
even within the same podcast feed, like there's probably people who listen to our podcast who really liked the NBA episodes, but everything else they can kind of take it or leave it. Or
Right.
maybe they really liked the TV show bracket or the movie stuff, but everything else is like, I don't really care. I'm
Well,
going to skip out on
yeah,
those.
and it's one of those
Great.
things.
I do the same thing,
Yeah. And it's one of those things like I brought up earlier. I want to do more collaborating with other people. I don't care. I'll shout out whatever other podcast because they're not going to take away from our listens in the
Yeah.
sense of they're doing the exact same thing we're doing. If they say the exact same things verbatim as we are, then we just need to team together because wow, that'd be great. Everything's different. There's not like, oh, I'm an audience of just browsing. No,
Yeah.
go be an audience of other podcasts.
Yeah.
You know, and that's where, you know, you collaborate with someone. I'll shout out another channel. I'll shout out 20 other podcasts. I don't care. But if I'm going to shout you out, yeah, I do want you to shout us back out as well. You know, it's give and take.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, hey, you know, go listen to this. And they're like, yeah, go fuck the Just Browsing podcast. And we're like, what?
Stay away from those guys.
Imbeciles. But no, yeah.
It's been fun, man. It's been a fun year of doing this.
It's been a fun year. I look
I
forward
think
to
we
the next
picked.
year.
It was like almost like.
We'll probably pick the worst year to jump into podcasting. Let's be real.
Well, okay, so that's twofold. We may have picked the worst time to jump into it because there's so many others available. But conversely, it's like the best time to do it because it's easier to do it now than it ever has been. And what I was going to say right before you said that is, I have a feeling that COVID and all the shutdowns kind of gave us the kick we needed to do this, to pull the trigger on doing this. Does that make sense? Like you said, we've been talking about doing this for years, and we just never had the motivation to like sit down, order the equipment, actually give it a name, do it, start recording, publishing episodes. And then COVID happened, and it was like all of a sudden everyone kind of found themselves with a little more free time and like, you know, I want to start exploring this hobby that I've been putting off on the back burner for a while. And that's what we did. We were just like, hey, you know what? We've been talking about this podcast for a few years. Fuck it. Let's just start it. And we just started it, and here we are. A year later, seems like it's gone by like that. I've been having a blast. We've had a lot of fun conversations, and we're going to have a lot of fun conversations moving forward, I'm sure. So,
yeah, I'm super stoked to continue doing this, whether we see growth or not. I think we will see growth, and I think we're going to hopefully catch our break sooner rather than later. But, yeah, it's not like I'm doing this to please everybody that listens.
yeah.
We're
doing
having,
it to become millionaires.
Right, we're having fun doing this, and if we please people in the process and we become millionaires in the process,
Great.
then as long as we're having fun and we continue having
But that would just
fun,
be
then
like a
that's really-
welcome byproduct of the whole point of doing it, which is just to have
right,
fun.
Right, we didn't set this up as a business
Yeah.
process.
I think if we wanted to make money, we would have started an actual business and tried to like.
Which, if you want to start a
go
business,
into
I'm
business.
down. Like, you know, I'm looking for things to do just to be my own boss. Everyone wants to be your own boss, so let's start a business. We need to find capital. We need to find an idea.
An idea? I was going to say, doing what? Just a business?
So apparently, there's around 2 million podcasts.
Wow.
I believe that's just on Apple Podcasts.
In 2021 now?
Which, as of April of 2021, there are 48 million episodes.
Holy shit, dude.
And to highlight this, apparently in 2018 and early June, Apple Podcasts had 550,000.
Oh, my God. So it's grown an insane amount in the last 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, so it's quadrupled in the last 2-3 years.
Wow.
But I think, you know, like you said, the pandemic was a great time because it allows us to come together and do it.
Mm-hmm.
And now that we're doing it, we need to get rid of the pandemic and get rid of all the people that are doing podcasts that aren't consistent.
That are just doing it because they're bored or whatever.
Get them back into the normal life. Whereas, you know, people that continue to be passionate about it can continue to do it and then continue to grow. So I think now that we're there, we started, life can go back to normal, and I don't see us changing doing this at all. Like I said, I don't have any desire to stop.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, and around here, things have been back to pretty much normal for a while now, and that hasn't stopped how often we get together and do these.
No.
I mean, yeah.
I was never worried about getting together and doing them either. And
Yeah.
it was just we needed to do something, and it worked out.
Let me ask you a question. Do you really listen to any podcast? Are you like a podcast listener?
I'm not a big podcast listener, no. I listen to our episodes. I listen to the Joe Rogan ones I'm interested in.
Yeah.
But, no. I don't lose interest, but if I'm going to listen to someone else talk for an hour and a half or 2 hours, 3 hours, I usually just watch a movie and listen to a bunch of other people talk while something else is going on.
Okay, I got you. I'm a big podcast listener. I since I got kind of introduced to what they are in college, I'm a big fan. I listen to podcasts all the time.
I mean, yeah, I'll throw them on in the background, but
I just think it's a really fun way to consume information outside of how the other areas that I consume information in. You know, like you can be while you're grocery shopping. I listen to podcasts a lot while I'm driving, grocery shopping, and working out. Like those are nice times, or like cleaning the house.
Right.
Just like while I'm doing another task, I can be consuming information or listening to an interesting conversation. I just think it's a fun way to. I like music a lot, and I listen to lots of music, but it's a nice thing to switch it up and not just go, okay, I'm listening to the same, playlist I've been listening to for however long.
Right. No, I mean,
I'm gonna have this I'm gonna listen to this interesting conversation about, whatever.
I have nothing against podcasts. It just sometimes for me, I'm just like, man, I don't really care to sit here and just listen to them talk. I'd rather either listen to music or watch a movie. And music, which I'm not, and who knows if people are still listening, I'm gonna get a lot of flack for this. But when I say I'm not a music person, don't dislike music. I'm just not. I don't follow music. When people come out with new albums and shit, I'm like,
Matt's just a fucking psycho who doesn't enjoy basic human, joy and happiness in life.
Hey, I will say,
like
I've
music.
found a new like in like house music.
Dude, I like house music.
Like I've started to really I don't know half the songs in them, but I'll like sit here and I'll listen to like the 4-hour long loop.
They're a fun
little.
They're a fun vibe. I found that's been one genre that I've listened to a lot more in the last, like, I'd say a couple years than I ever did in my entire life. And what I've found is, like, while I'm working, I think I've told you this before, I can't listen to podcasts while I'm working. I'm not good enough at a multitasker to, like, listen to a conversation and type out emails and do all that kind of stuff. So I'll listen to music, and if I can find house music or like EDM, not like hardcore like dubstep or anything, but just like remixes to pop songs that have like an EDM like beat to it and just kind of like loop a couple times, I get in like a nice little vibe and a nice little rhythm while I'm working. It's just kind of fun to just, I don't know, have my headphones on and just
I like
chill out and vibe out to that kind of music. I like it.
I like house music because it's not EDM.
Yeah.
Like in the sense
it's
of
not as
like,
aggressive, it seems like. Yeah.
The songs they take are songs that originally have pretty good beats,
right? And a good chorus and stuff, yeah.
And they make it more,
It adds to like the original song, in my opinion.
I think it makes it more friendly in a sense. Like you can listen to it, and you never get like, even if it's a sad song, they kind of make it like a pick me up song where you're kind of like, man, I can kind of like, I can get down to this music and just kind of enjoy it. And
that is the kind of cool thing is they'll take. It can almost change the entire genre of the song, where it can change it from like a sad song to a happy, uplifting song.
Like all of the
just
Avicii
by totally
songs, I
changing
find
the beat.
are in like all of the loops I listen to.
Yeah,
like all of them. And if you listen to his lyrics, most of them are decently, happy. But there's some that are like, man, it's kind of dark. Like, it seems like it's lively, but it's kind of dark in the lyrics. I mean, but a lot of songs are really dark in lyrics because they're. A lot of them are written from a traumatic experience of life.
I think that there's a lot more to that. There's a lot more depth to that genre of music than a lot of people give it credit for, I feel like. And I try and keep an open mind when it comes to music. I try and listen to all kinds of different genres. I mean, there's some that are, not my cup of tea. I just can't really get into it for whatever reason, but they all have value, and there's depth to all of them, and I can see why people get really interested and attached to certain genres. Right. But yeah, there's just some of them that I'm like, it's just not for me.
I'm the same way, but I just don't have like a drive for music. It's not like I don't not enjoy music, but like we've discussed, you want to go to a concert, but I would rather spend the concert money to go to like a hockey game or a football game.
That's
like
really
that to me is just. Like, don't get me wrong, the atmospheres are completely different. But I just think I have more fun at, like, a hockey game than I do at a concert for some reason. Despite concerts are, it's just a kind of a constant flow of hopefully good vibes and good energy. Hockey games, you can be sitting there for 45 minutes without, like, that one exciting goal or something. But when that goal hits, that adrenaline's just like... oh yeah. So I just enjoy that more, but I also enjoy sports, I think, to a higher level overall than you do in a say, just like you enjoy music way more than I do.
Yeah. And I like sports, but I'm probably more into music than I am in sports.
Right. And I'm way more into sports than I am into music or will ever be into music, where I follow like the NHL free agency period opened up on the 28th. I had 4 windows open, refreshing probably every 5 minutes, trying to follow what the Avs were doing, where ex-Avs players were going, or where big-name players were signing, and things that were going on, because I want to see how next season's going to, project to be. I would do a fucking hockey podcast every day. You'd run out of things to talk about eventually, but, I could do sports. I could talk sports the whole time.
I think my thing... Because I've played sports and I've been really interested in sports my whole life. I think I'm just so fucking busy with work. You know, you become an adult and you start working full time. You just start realizing like how busy you get and how little amount of free time you have. I just can't keep track of sports the way that I can with music, because music you can consume like podcasts while you're doing other stuff.
Well,
you know
a
what I mean?
new album's
Like,
about an hour,
yeah,
hour and a half.
I can listen to an entirely new album while I'm working, or while I'm driving around town doing errands, or while I'm working out, or whatever, while I'm cleaning the house. But I can't clean the house or work out and read the latest trade rumors about Aaron Rodgers at the same time. You know what I mean? There's just some things that you can do where you can consume music while you're doing other stuff. And I'm more of like, I've learned this about myself recently, where like I just like to maximize. I like to make my life as time efficient as possible, to where I can be like, okay, I'm going to the store. I know I need to go grocery shopping, but I'm going to knock out this podcast that have been wanting to listen to all week while I'm doing that. You know what I mean? It's not like I have to set aside an hour to listen to the podcast and an hour to do grocery shopping. I just do them at the same time. And same thing with like working out or whatever. And music goes the same way. It's like I can listen to this new Kid Cudi album while I'm grocery shopping.
Music can go anywhere. And like for me, and I'll be honest, I'm such a big like Broncos fan. I don't like missing watching the games. I want to watch the games no matter how good or bad our team is. I want to be either in the stadium or on my couch watching the full entire game.
You and I differ from that, because there's some games where like, if I got shit going on a Sunday, or I got errands I got to do, or like, you know, people I got to go see, I'll just check the scores. You know, I'll just see the scoring updates, track the game's progress, and look at the box score and stats at the end of the game, and I'm okay missing the game. Whereas, like, you're not. You're like, no. This is what I'm doing today is I'm watching the Broncos game.
Like, not going to lie.
Fuck anything that my family or my friends have to do. I'm watching the Broncos
game.
Well,
my dad's the same way. I think I got it from him. He does not. My mom will go out and she'll do all of the shopping and errands she needs to do on Sundays when the Broncos are playing.
Dude, low-key, best time to go grocery shopping is when the Broncos are playing. It's great.
But, like, so, you know, like the Super Bowl, it's supposed to be a gathering of friends and family, and, you know, you enjoy it. We went to the Super Bowl over at Ty's parents' house, which is fine. I enjoyed being there because the Broncos weren't playing. I'm going to get engaged into the game, but I'll be engaged in what's happening around me as well. When the Broncos play in the Super Bowl, though, I kind of am one of those people. I'm like, I do get into the sport. And people are like, why do you get mad? Like, you're not even on the team. And I'm like, but that's the thing. I can't be on the team. I have never once in my life said I'm a good enough football player to be a professional. So the people representing me are out there. That's the team I've grown up cheering for. Of course I'm emotionally, invested into it, because that's what teams are. It's just like, I'll use music as an example because that's what we're talking about. Michael Jackson dies, and there's millions of people that come out of the blue as the biggest Michael Jackson's fan, and they do all these memorials. What's the difference between... I understand it's a death. I'm not taking away from that. What's the difference between the fans, having emotions towards, a musician dying, or, having emotions to a team winning? What's the difference there? I'm not saying, like, the Broncos lose the Super Bowl. It's not like I'm going to be in this self-pity for months. I'll get over it after an hour or two and be like, all right, I'm just not going to watch ESPN for a week because they're just going to talk shit, like when they lost to the Seahawks.
Yeah.
I knew it. I'm like, I'm not watching ESPN because it's just going to make me mad on how pitiful the Broncos played. But I'm over it. What's so wrong with people being emotionally invested in a sports team compared to like a music, like an artist or something?
Well, there's nothing wrong with it,
and there's no difference.
Yeah.
It's just I
don't get. I'm just not one of those people. I don't get
right. So like,
and I don't get super emotionally attached to really anything. I mean, I think
right because you just don't have emotions.
Sure. I think movies and like books are probably the only things that I get like really emotionally connected to, where I'll have like a strong connection to like my favorite movies or my favorite books or whatever. But even those, it's like, well,
it's hard to have like for me in hockey. I played hockey when I was younger, but I can't get like emotionally attached to being like, that could be me out there, because I'm like, well, I gave up the sport before I even realized my full potential in it. So
yeah,
I guess it could be me out there, but I'm not sitting there like that should be me out there. I'm sitting there like, I can't do that shit. So, but I love this hockey team, so I'm gonna cheer for them like I am out there.
I think another thing too, to go to what I was saying earlier about like time efficiency and all that in terms of consuming everything I want to consume, is I think I treat sports now as like what they really are, which is another form of entertainment.
Oh, yeah.
And I think my thing about watching the Broncos game, like if I've seen, a quarter of the season and I have pretty realistic expectations about how good the team is, and we're coming up against a team who's like, the Chiefs, who's like real good. I'm like, I might just skip out on this one and like watch a movie today.
Like when we played the Saints this year without a quarterback, we had to bring in a practice squad wide receiver who played quarterback in like high school.
This is supposed to be entertaining to me, and I know I'm not going to be as entertained by this game as I am going to be by a movie, so I'm just going to watch the movie. But I'm still interested in what's going on in the game. I'll check up on it. I'll read on it later, look at the stats, read the official recap. Because there's like sports reporters that'll recap the whole game for you in a short little article.
Oh, yeah.
I'll read through
watch the highlights on YouTube.
Watch the highlights on YouTube and be like, okay, now I know what happened. I'm caught up. I know what's going on with the team, what we're looking forward for next week and all that kind of stuff. But I didn't have to waste 3 hours of my day watching us struggle to play without a quarterback. You know what I mean? Like it was not going to be entertaining to me at all to watch that.
I mean, I've gotten to the point where, I understand our team and where we're at.
Yeah, you got to have some realistic expectations about it.
If we're in the game at the end of the first half, I usually am like, okay, I'm not going to start anything or do anything. And then as slowly as we start to fall out of games and we're like, okay, we're going to lose unless, Tebow time comes back.
Right, yeah.
I'll have it playing, or I'll be like in here playing games or doing something on my computer, or I'll clean my house where I can hear it. And they're like, oh, a big play. And I go out there and I'm like, wasn't for us. And then they're like, they say it again. I'm like, are we back in the game? I'm like, wasn't for us. We threw another interception. All right. And then the game ends, and I'm like, all right, we've got a good 2:00 game on today. Let's watch this.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, let's see how my fantasy team's doing. I'm like, all right. It was just a loss all around.
I think that's another thing, too, about football is I am a Broncos fan, and I'm going to be rooting for them to win each game. But, like, if there's some other game that's going to be on at the same time that seems more exciting to me, I'm probably going to spend more time watching that game than I am the Broncos game.
See, I grew in my household. If you changed it off the Broncos game, you were going to a different room to watch TV. So I got used to that.
I'm not quite that serious about it.
Like the Broncos have sucked. Let's be real. The past ever since 6 years, 5 years we won when we won the Super Bowl. So the Avalanche have been good. So the Broncos were playing one Sunday night, and the Avs were playing that Sunday night, and I'm like, screw it, Dad, the Broncos are going to lose. So I flip it to the Avs game, and he's like, what the hell are you doing? And I'm like, they already lost. They lost before they got here.
Yeah.
I'm like, we have Trevor Siemian at quarterback.
And there's
what do you think we're going to win?
I think we've talked about this before, too. The difference between college football and pro football is there's a lot of matchups in pro football where you're like, you got a pretty good idea going in which team's going to win. You know what I mean? College could go either way most of the time.
And there's a lot that you're like, okay, Ohio State should be, Fairbanks School for the Deaf and Blind. but there's always that chance that Fairbanks School for the Deaf and Blind comes in and just like Appalachian State against Michigan. Exactly. That's really what started this whole string of massive upsets. Yeah. After that, there's always been a massive upset. And it doesn't have to be a ranked team. It can just be a D1 team losing to a D2 team.
Yeah.
And everyone's like,
I think the only school in college football that has been kind of immune from that whole thing is maybe Bama.
And Clemson probably.
And Clemson.
Those two are
9 times out of 10, they're going to win the game.
Which, speaking of college football real quick, have you seen the news that Texas and OU are good? We're going to have to do a college football discussion.
I'm down. Let's do it.
Because
they're joining the SEC apparently in 2025,
joining the SEC right? After I don't know if it's after the 2025 season or
like starting that season.
Starting 2025.
Yeah. How do you feel about that? I don't know if Sam and I we briefly mentioned it when the news was kind of breaking the other day at dinner, and Sam was like, I don't know if Texas and OU are ready for the SEC. I don't know if they're prepared for like the level of competition they're going to be facing.
OU will be better suited for it than
Texas has really struggled last couple of years in the Big 12.
In the Big 12.
Yeah.
I think, and I'd have to, try and find this picture, but I think that there is a good chance that college football should truly look to realign into 5 major conferences. And you're getting rid of Conference USA, you're getting rid of the Mountain West, you're getting rid of the Sun Belt or whatever it is now, you're getting rid of,
Big Sky,
the MAC, any Division I school that's not D1 AA. So if I think Big Sky's D1 AA. So
yeah,
they would stay
they are
intact.
AA. Yeah,
but I saw it, and they would conference realign into massive conferences.
So there's just like 5 super conferences, basically.
Right, and you'd have rotating schedules. So you would play you could do divisions, but so you always play your division every year, but then you always play a different division, and then you rotate those divisions. So I think like for the Pac-12, it would be the current Pac-12. They would add in like Boise State, and probably a couple California schools.
Yeah.
Or like maybe Utah State, BYU. So you'd add in like some of that, and they were like, so the mountain range, so Colorado, Utah, whatever, would all be in like a specific division. They'd always play those teams.
Yeah.
And then they would play another division inside their own conference every year. It would just be a different division, like the NFL does. They always are playing a different division inside their own conference. And then you would throw in playing a different – I think you would throw in another division from another conference. So you always would play that. And I would really have to see how they realigned it. But I'm like, you know what? That does make sense at the end of the day. Now, what doesn't add up, though, is each conference has media rights.
Yeah.
Each school gets a certain percentage of those media rights. I don't watch SEC football on CBS every Saturday to watch Arkansas play Missouri.
Yeah.
I want to see Alabama. I want to see LSU. I want to see Auburn. I want to see, when
Florida.
Ole Miss and Mississippi State were good. I want to see them.
Yeah.
I want to see Florida. I want to see the big schools playing the big schools in a like those are like pro games in my opinion. They play pro style offenses most of the time,
and they're played in front of like 75,000 people.
75,000 to 110,000.
Yeah.
There's no in between. It's either sold out at 75,000 or sold out at 110,000. Yeah. Give me those big games. I don't want to watch, like I said, I don't care to watch Arkansas and Texas play unless they're ranked 1 and 2. I'm not interested. Arkansas has been dog shit for years. Texas has been like mediocre. They like flirt with being good, and then they come out and you're like, holy shit, you're bad. So I don't know. I mean, I'll be interested to see. I think OU will do better in the SEC than Texas will, but I think college football needs to kind of realign everything. Go to 5 Power 5 conferences.
I'm very curious.
Expand the playoff to 12.
I need to do some more research into that, but what was the rationale? Like, what was why did they want to leave the Big 12?
I don't think the Big 12 has when I say power, I mean like power rankings, how like I think it's BPI for college football. I don't think they have the BPI to push them ahead of like the ACC, or the SEC's been sending 2 teams to the college football playoff every year is what it seems like.
Right.
The Big Ten's a stronger conference. The Pac-12 you can say is a stronger conference overall. Maybe not have a better team though. Mm-hmm. ACC, you got Florida State and Clemson, who are usually one of those two is going to be and Miami now, who's going to be a top-tier team. Mm-hmm. And then the SEC, you got LSU, Bama, Florida, Georgia. Yeah. Can't forget about Georgia. Mm-hmm. That are powerhouses. So I think the rationale was we're playing West Virginia, we're playing the Baylors, Kansas States, Iowa State. A lot of those have good teams, but they're not that. They're not at a Bama every year. Or they're not in
So it's really
or an Auburn. I think it's to help get them more national exposure.
Yeah, and a chance at the college football playoff then. Yeah.
Right.
Because they just feel like some of these conferences that are outside of the SEC and like the ACC get overlooked when it comes to that kind of
right. I mean, how do you have a team that's not even in a conference championship make it into the college football playoff?
Yeah.
Oh, their name's Alabama. They lost 1 game in the season, which kicked them out of the SEC championship game.
That is kind of an interesting discussion because it's always been traditionally like if you win your conference championship, that's giving you a pretty good shot.
Right. So and
then like if Bama doesn't win, then there's the argument for like, oh well, let's take this other team from a different conference that won their conference championship. But then there's like plenty of
Bama's the best team.
Right. Plenty of
there.
legitimate arguments saying, well, Bama's a better team. Like that team may have won their conference championship, but Bama's going to beat them in a head-to-head matchup. Like,
so that's where I go and I say, make this change, do a big realignment, make 5 Power 5 conferences. Let the conferences and schools work on their money share. Of course, I think CU should make more money than a Utah State or a Wyoming or whatever. Make the conference realignments. Make the college football realignments, 8 or 12 teams. Your top 5, your conference championship winners are automatic bids in. Mm-hmm. top 12 or top 8, whatever it comes down to, fill in the rest. And that top 8 could be, your top 5 conference. 4 of those conference champions could be 8, 7, 6, 3. And then you have the number 1 team. So you have the number 2 ranked team being Georgia, but they lost to Florida and didn't make it to the SEC championship game, but they're ranked 2. Mm-hmm. Make it be that way. And I think that'd make football way more entertaining.
Dude, I'm so excited now that we're talking about that. I'm so excited for football season.
I think we have 55 days till preseason, maybe?
Really?
Or maybe that's week 1. I got too many damn computers in here.
Because NFL is going to kick off. College football is going to kick off. We're going to have fantasy football. Football season's great.
And then
now that I don't play, I thoroughly enjoy football season.
I feel like that. I mean, I miss football. I would go back and play high school football all over again. I would do a lot of things.
Not a fucking chance.
I would do a lot of things different. So Broncos preseason actually kicks off in 13 days.
Wow.
So our first regular season game
the day before my birthday, they're playing a preseason game.
Is on the 12th.
September 12th.
So literally a month and 11 days.
Yeah, that's coming right around the corner, man.
Wait, a month and 11? Yeah, okay.
It's exciting.
I'm so excited.
Football. Yeah, for my money nowadays, man, football is it's the best. It's the most entertaining sport to watch.
I go back and forth with it and hockey as far as entertainment goes. If you want to look for like a nonstop movement, hockey's better than football. But if you want to look more for like the big, like hockey, there's not going to be like a big play. You're not going to get, I mean, there's good plays, there's very skilled plays, but it's not like a 99-yard touchdown. There's something different about a 99-yard touchdown than there is about a shorthanded breakaway goal or something. You know, there's just something more exciting of like the running back breaking 8 tackles at the line of scrimmage, and all of a sudden there's no one near him. Yeah. His name's Derrick Henry, and he's like 6 foot 19 inches, 384 pounds with like a 4.1 40.
And then he gets 49 fantasy points in our league off of one play.
And you're like, oh, I lost fantasy this week.
Because of one play.
And then the next play, when he gets 1 yard, he gets a fucking 6-point bonus because he gets over the 100 and he gets that yard to give him the 100.
Good old fantasy. Hey, this is the monster we created. We signed up for this. I wouldn't have it any other way. Because when it works in your favor, you're like, fuck yeah, I'm glad we had all these bonuses. But when it works against you, you're like, oh my God, why do we have these bonuses?
When I was setting up the league, when we were all around, and I was setting everything up, making the points, and I'm like asking people, and no one was paying attention, I go, all right, fuck it. I'm going to set it up the way I want it to be. And that's it. Like, people are just going to be stuck with it. And someone lost because their field goal kicker missed an extra point. And I'm like, it's minus 15 points if they miss an extra point. And that was the first year they moved it back to like the 15.
Yeah.
And they're like, that's a bunch of bullshit. And I was like, all right, I'll move it down to 5 or 10. Okay, my bad. But when I asked you guys, no one answered. So it's how I
love the way we have it set up, dude. Yeah, I wouldn't have it any other way. It makes it so exciting.
Dude, I tell people, they're like, I won my fantasy league this year with a huge score. I was like, oh, what'd you score? And they're like, it was like 76-63. And I was like, yeah, that's kind of boring. Or they're like, it was 76.312614. And and I'm like, well, I won 285 to 162.
Right,
so.
right.
Well, I lost 310-6.
Yeah. It's so like, great. I love it.
What's on your team? How did you score that many points? I'm like, well, it's just that's how I set up our league.
Yeah, and we have giant lineups, and the scoring is out of control.
I've thought about how to make bigger lineups and make life more difficult for all of us because it's hard enough to get depth on our teams with how big they are. That the only thing I could think of would be to add another quarterback.
Oh my God! Let's not do that.
We have 8 teams currently, right?
Uh-huh.
So if we add another quarterback, that would take us to 24 starting quarterbacks. Which, if you think about it, that leaves 8 starters out there
available for bench players.
Right. So you have to be smart and select 4 starters as your quarterbacks that have buys on different weeks because otherwise you're picking up a quarterback that just sits on the bench. And you pray that the starter gets hurt as long as you don't have them.
Oh, man.
So I've looked at it, and I'm like, I can't find a spot where we can expand this and have viable lineup. Like right now I think is perfect because you can have a pretty stacked team and have okay bench players, but it's not like you've got 5 wideouts, and you're like, I don't know if I can play this guy or not because they're not like a big star.
Yeah.
So,
I like the way we do it. It's completely the opposite of the way my work league lineup is set up. So the scoring in my work league is all very low scores, and the lineups are very small compared to ours. And then ours is the complete opposite, where the lineups are huge and the scoring is astronomical.
I think I might change
I like
the
it. It's a
scoring
good
a little
dichotomy.
bit this year. I want to find more ways to subtract points for bad behavior.
Bad behavior.
So
That's a funny way to put it.
I think I'm going to look to see if fumbles and interceptions might be docked more, because in interceptions -2, but in real life and in a game that has a lot bigger impact than
could be a
minus,
6-7 point swing
because
real
like
quick.
if you're Jameis Winston, like 2 years ago I was playing against him, he had like 58 points, but he had 6 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, but like 400 yards, and was sacked like 6 times, and I'm like, you had a good game, but touchdowns
6 interceptions is
like, why is a
really
touchdown
bad.
worth 6 but an interception's -2?
Yeah.
Like, I might bump that -2 to -4
Yeah.
and penalize more for interceptions and fumbles, because those are costly in-game situations that should be penalized more in like fantasy football is supposed to be who has the best team out there. You throw an interception, it shouldn't be -2. So I might look at that, and I don't know if I'll even it with the touchdowns. So you have 6 interceptions and 6 touchdowns. Well, that doesn't matter. Those block each other off.
Then
it's all yardages and sacks and fumbles. So you get sacked 6 times. Maybe I'll jump those up to those are -1. That's probably good, -1, because that's not a
Well, hey, listen here,
play.
Commish. Before you start doing anything, make sure you run that by the other owners in the league.
Nah, fuck that. The other owners in the league never get back to me when I ask.
Well, I will have some input.
Well,
so
your input can be
run
recorded
run
right
them
now.
by me.
I'm running it right now.
Well, before you actually click any buttons, run it by me.
I might be clicking buttons right now. You just can't see it.
You need to send out a league-wide email outlining
fuck
your
the other
proposed
owners.
changes.
This is a power grab. This is a commissioner power grab.
You ready to wrap this up?
No. We're going to sit here and talk about fantasy football because that's what the listeners want.
Right.
No, yeah, we're good. Yeah, everybody, thanks for tuning in for our 1-year anniversary.
Yeah, thanks for sticking with us this long if you've been a listener from the beginning. And if you're a first-time listener, welcome. And we're looking forward to the year and /years to come. So.
Yep, and we won't be back with an episode this upcoming work week, but we'll be back with an episode the following week because this is going to be this week's episode.
Yeah, we wanted to get this up on our actual 1-year anniversary of starting the podcast. So
we will talk to you guys next week about
something.
We haven't discussed it yet. But yeah, thanks for tuning in. Again, we appreciate all the love and support for the past year, and we look forward to another amazing year of podcast episodes. And I can't really say friendships because no one ever reaches out to us. But just podcast episodes.
Yeah. Well, thanks, everybody. Thanks for tuning in.
Later.
Until next time. Liddy.